We are the Ministry of the Real Truth, and we're continuing our look into the claims of Pastor Stephen Anderson. And this is an old video that we found in the public access public domain, so no copyright infringement or breach was intended. Here he talks about Daniel 3:25 in the Aramaic being the Son of God, proving that the KJV or King James Version is correct with its translation of the Son of God compared to the other versions like the ESV, RSV, NIV, etc., which reads as the sons of a god or the son of the gods. Let's have a listen to this video to see what he has to say.
Hey everybody, Pastor Stephen Anderson here from Faithful Word Baptist Church in Tempe, Arizona. Today I want to talk to you about Daniel chapter 3 verse 25. The Bible reads, "He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God." And I'm reading this from the King James Version. If you have a modern version like the ESV or the NIV or something along those lines, it's going to say, a son of the gods. So King James says the Son of God, and these modern versions say a son of the gods. So which one's right? Is the King James right, or are the modern versions right?
Okay, so we're going to have a look at those Americanized modern English versions, NIV, ESV, etc., and what they have to say in regards to Daniel 3:25. This is a commentary by Alec Cotts, Matthew Henry, etc. And Daniel 3:25 in the King James Version, we believe, reads, "He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire. They have no hurt, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God." Okay, so he's correct there. And it's got an explanation by Ellicott. The Son of God, these words, let us remember, are uttered by a heathen king who calls the same person in Daniel 3:28 an angel of the God whom the 3 children worshipped. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Right? Probably Nebuchadnezzar thought that he stood to Jehovah in the same relation that he himself did to Merodach. Maybe that's his god, right? Pagan god. His conceptions of the power of Jehovah were evidently raised by what he had witnessed, though as yet he does not recognize him as being more than a chief among gods, a god of many gods. Right? He has not risen to that conception of the utility of God which is essential to his absolute supremacy. But still the question has to be answered. What did the king see? The earlier patristic interpretation was that it was none other than Christ himself. We have no means of ascertaining anything further and must be content with knowing that the same angel of God's presence who was with Israel in the wilderness watched over the people in Babylon. That's Ellicott's commentary, Bible Hub. Matthew Henry's concise commentary, so it's supposed to be right on the button, right? 3:19:27. Let Nebuchadnezzar heat his furnace as hot as he can. A few minutes will finish the torment of those cast into it. But hellfire tortures and yet does not kill. Those who worship the beast in his image have no rest, no pause, no moment free from pain. Revelations 14:10-11. Now was fulfilled in the letter that great promise, Isaiah 43:2. When thou walkest through the fire, thou shalt not be burned. Leaving it to that God who preserved them in the fire to bring them out, they walked up and down in the midst, supported and encouraged by the presence of the Son of God. Those who suffer for Christ have his presence in their sufferings, even in the fiery furnace and in the valley of the shadow of death. Nebuchadnezzar owns them for servants of the Most High God. Not slaves, servants. A God able to deliver them out of his hand. It is our God only is the consuming fire, Hebrews 12:29. Could we but see into the eternal world, we should behold the persecuted believer, safe from the malice of his foes, while they are exposed to the wrath of God and tormented in unquenchable fires. Yeah, that's talking about those who reject God, those who are his enemies. They're exposed and they're seen, they'd be seen incurring the wrath of God, tormented in unquenchable fires. Barnes notes on the Bible, he answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, from the fact that he saw these men now loose, and that's filled him with so much surprise. That would be Nebuchadnezzar. It may be presumed that they had been bound with something that was not combustible, with some sort of fetters or chains. In that case, it would be a matter of surprise that they should be loose, even though they could survive the action of the fire. The fourth personage, now so mysteriously added to their number, is evident, assuming the appearance of a man and not the appearance of a celestial being, though it was the aspect of a man so noble and majestic that he deserved to be called a son of God. Okay, this is Barnes' notes on the Bible, right? This is his opinion. Walking in the midst of the fire, the furnace therefore was large, so that those who were in it could walk about. The vision must have been sublime, and it is a beautiful image of the children of God, often walking unhurt amidst dangers, safe between the divine protection. And they have no hurt. Margin, there is no hurt in them. They walk unharmed amidst the flames. Of course, the king judged in this only from the appearances, but the result, Daniel 3:27, showed that it was really so, and so forth. Note, in the form of the fourth Chaldee, Reve, his appearance from Ra'ah to see, that is, he seemed to be a son of God. He looked like a son of God. The word does not refer to anything special or peculiar in his form or figure, but it may be supposed to denote something that was noble or majestic in his mien, something in his countenance and demeanour that declared him to be of heavenly origin. Like the Son of God, there are two inquiries which arise in regard to this expression. One is, what was the idea, etc., etc. Okay, and there's Keel and Delitzsch Bible commentary on the Old Testament, pulpit commentary, and so forth. Here's King James Version, King James Bible. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. And then you have New King James Version. Look, he answered, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. American Standard. It changes, right? He answered, and it's translated differently. He answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, or look, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. It's not affecting them, right? And the aspect of the fourth is like a son of the gods. Berean Study Bible, look, he exclaimed, I see 4 men unbound and unharmed walking in the fire, and the fourth looks like a son of the gods. See how it's all different? And then some actually say, like the Douay Rheims, Son of God. I would say son of the gods again, and so forth. So this Anderson is correct in saying that the King James Bible actually says like the Son of God, as does the book of Daniel chapter 3:25 from the original ancient, very old Tav Esheret, or Aramaic, Ishana Atika Sapreya, the secret scribal language of God, that which he spoke to Adam and Eve in the garden, and that the men at the Tower of Babel spoke. So let's have a look at 3:25. What does that say in this ancient Aramaic? The king replied and said, Behold, I saw the men untied walking about in the fire, and they have suffered no burns. There's a footnote indication there. And the vision of a fourth one resembles the son of their God. Then King Nebadchanesser, or Nebuchadnezzar, came close to the door of the burning fiery furnace and replied, saying, Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, O servants of the God, not slaves, in the highest, get out and come forth, because his men were told to stoke the fires hotter, and they went to do that, and they just got burnt, badly burnt. It was just too hot. At once, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego got out of the fiery furnace. Then there gathered all the nations, chief of armies, governors, lords, and the greatest kings, and they saw those men upon whose flesh the fires had no effect. The hair on their heads had not been singed, their pants had not been burned, and the smell of fire was not upon them. King Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, Blessed is the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angels to deliver his servants, who relied on him and who denigrated the words of the king and risked their lives so as not to work for any god except their own God. And this is what Nebuchadnezzar commanded, that any nation's motherland or tongues that blaspheme against Shadrach, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego's God shall be immediately slain and their houses plundered, because there is no other God that can act like this. Thus the king, Nebuchadnezzar, raised a statue of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the country of Babylon. So he made them, or their status, greater than what it was amongst the peoples. And when he's talking about nations, he's not talking about Indonesia or Fiji or Australia or anything like that. He's talking about those nations around his particular country that all gathered to this one place, with Nebuchadnezzar looking on at these three thrown into this fire. Apparently, this is what we read years and years ago. Somebody tried to say, oh, well, there must have been a cold point in that particular oven, or where they're stoking the fires, or whatever. There would have been this one spot that was cool, so they could have just gone there and figured it out, gone there, and that way they wouldn't get burnt. They're away from the fire and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, right. Okay. Make exactly the same. Okay, we don't promote this, but this is just an example. Put people in that same situation, and control the fire, right? Maybe make a gas fire or something like that. Be in control of it, so you can turn it down, whatever. And say to them, right now, find a cold spot. Okay. Is there a cold spot there? That's the only way to prove it, right? So, this King Nebuchadnezzar, he suddenly believed in the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Okay? Because only their God could have done that. Okay, there's the footnotes. Of interest is 324.2. Footnote. Note, in the New American Bible, the St. Joseph edition of the Catholic Bible, there are 66 additional verses after this passage. The footnote explaining this states, these verses are inspired additions to the Aramaic text of Daniel, translated from the Greek form of the book. They were originally composed in Hebrew or Aramaic, which has not been preserved. This is what they're stating, but these are the preserved manuscripts of the Old Testament. So they're wrong there. The Church has always regarded them as part of the canonical scriptures. Let's analyse this footnote a little. Are these verses an inspired addition? The Church does not believe that the ancient Aramaic scriptures are the authentic scriptures preserved by the ancient Church of the East since the Apostolic Age. Again, let's analyse this footnote a little. Are these verses an inspired addition? The Church does not believe that the ancient Aramaic scriptures are the authentic scriptures preserved by the ancient Church of the East since the Apostolic Age. This is the modern churches. Therefore, they have accepted these additions, which spin a yarn at this point in the book of Daniel, but they really don't change the story. What's remarkable is that the Church had to declare these additions as inspired to overcome the problem of adding to the Bible. The fact that the Greek version has additional passages or extra passages indicates that the Greek original put a spin on the ancient Aramaic scriptures, and there is no telling how many more inspired additions the Greek original has incorporated. Then we have the Latin, the German, and the English translations. How many more inspired additions did they contribute? So that basically verifies what we have said in our many videos about these modern Americanized modern English versions, the NIV, ESV, RSV, Good News, Living Bible, etc. That they're coming from a certain source, a mother church. They've been translated from the original Hebrew, so they say, into the Old Germanic or Old German, and then a monk or scribe, i.e. Martin Luther, has translated that Old German into the Old Latin, and then later on it's been translated into the Old English, Middle English, etc. And then further on, centuries later, it's translated into the modern Americanized modern English. Okay, it's very Americanized. It's very American scented or flavored. And Pastor Stephen Anderson verifies this in his way. Let's go back to the video to hear what else he has to say.
In this video, I'm going to prove to you, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that the translation found in the NIV, the ESV, and these others is literally grammatically impossible according to the rules of Aramaic grammar. I'm going to prove this to you so clearly, even a layman will be able to understand what I show you. And if you verify this information with any Hebrew professor, any Aramaic professor, I guarantee you that they will confirm the validity of what I'm about to show you. Okay, so before I get into this, let me just explain to you the importance of this passage. Of course, this is Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They refuse to bow down to false gods. They get thrown into the fiery furnace, and then Nebuchadnezzar is astonished to look into the fiery furnace and see not 3 men, but 4 men. And he makes this prophetic utterance, the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. So this, of course, pictures Jesus Christ saving us from hell. And Jesus is the Son of God. Amen? We know that. But there are false religions out there, like the Unitarian, Modalist, Oneness Pentecostals, who don't believe in the Trinity, and they don't believe that the Son of God existed in the Old Testament. So this verse just absolutely demolishes their doctrine. They hate this verse because they don't like the fact that it talks about the Son of God in the Old Testament. Of course, people have...
Yeah, as he states there, Jesus is mentioned throughout the Old Testament. He even said to the Pharisees that were standing in front of him, right, in his day, they doubted that he was the Messiah, etc. They're trying to prove that he wasn't, or catch him up. He said to them, you look through the scriptures to find me. It actually speaks about me, Jesus, right? I'm standing here right in front of you, and you're not believing me, right? That's me. Throughout the Old Testament, and later on it will be in the New Testament, right? It speaks about me. It's all about me. Okay? We are just wondering, is this what they call the nukta or something else, where they've added vowels, and these are some sort of indication there? Because this is the Hebrew, right? This is the Aramaic. Would this be a modern Aramaic dialect, or a modern Hebrew or Israeli Hebrew dialect? Okay, we're not that hot on this kind of Aramaic, right? We're not sure, but we'll continue with this video because it's a very important thing that he says that we'll cover.
Object to this and say, well, what does Nebuchadnezzar know? He's just a pagan king or whatever. But obviously, God is allowing him to make this prophetic utterance that the form of the 4th is like the Son of God, that Jesus is the 4th man in the fire, just like Caiaphas or Cyrus the Great, make utterances by the Holy Ghost, even though they're not even saved. I mean, Caiaphas was unsaved, yet he spake by the Holy Ghost in the book of John. But anyway, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. This is a really cool verse. I remember the first time I read this as a kid. It really blew my mind, Daniel 3:25. But let's look at the facts, right? Let's look at the grammar, and let's see what's going on here. So, I've written 2 different things on the board here. First of all, let me just explain to you that Aramaic and Hebrew are very closely related languages. They're both Semitic languages. They are like Spanish and Portuguese, where they're just that close, okay? Closer than, say, Spanish and Italian, in my opinion. I mean, they're very close together. If you can understand the one, it wouldn't be very hard for you to learn the other because they're both very closely related. Okay, so...
Yeah, because they all come from the Latin, the old Latin. So as he says a couple of seconds after that, if you knew one, say if you knew Spanish, you'd probably understand the Italian, or if you knew the Italian, you'd probably understand the French. Okay, so he's right there.
We have these two terms here that I've read. This is the term in question in Daniel 3:25 in the original Aramaic.
Okay, there he says it's the original Aramaic. So, does he know anything? Is he well versed in the original, ancient, very old Tav Asherit or Aramaic? In the Shana Artika Sapaya, the second scribal language of God. Is he as well versed in it as the Aramaic, the native born Aramaic translator from Bethnarain or Mesopotamia Syria, Victor N.Alexander? Or perhaps Lamsa, who supposedly didn't believe in the Trinity. He left that out. Okay, we'll continue.
Didn't know the book of Daniel, part of it is not written in Hebrew, part of it's written in Aramaic. And this verse in question, Daniel 3:25, comes from the Aramaic section. So,
we've got to add that when he said that the Aramaic and the Hebrew are close like Portuguese and Spanish, the original ancient, very old Aramaic, or Tav Asherit, and the original ancient, very old Hebrew, or Tav Ivri, yes, they were very similar. That's where you get the term Hebrew, Aramaic Hebrew, or Hebrew Aramaic, by different theologians, scholars, etc. They were sister languages. They had the same words with the same meanings. That's how close they were. Okay, one was used in the temple, the Hebrew, for all things holy, and the Aramaic supposedly used outside for everyday talk, banter, and other things. So, again, they were sister languages, had the same words, same meanings, up until a stage, perhaps when the Masoretes decided, we'll add vowels, because the Aramaic and the Hebrew originally did not have vowels. The Aramaic had an A, but it was regarded as a consonant, not a vowel. It's in the word Allah. Okay. So yeah, when these vowels were added, with the premise that it's easier for the learner to pronounce, or whatever the excuse was, it not only changed or altered the structure of the languages, it also changed the meaning of the words. Okay? I.e., you have Iuma. We'll have a look in the original book of Brita, or Genesis, where supposedly God says, let there be sky and the balance like water, for example, and it has here, and God called the sky heaven, and that was the evening and the morning of the second eon. Okay. God called the light day and the darkness night, and the evening and the morning became part of one cycle. The parenthesis here, the first eon, and there's a footnote indication right there. So we're going to have a look at that footnote indication, and here is the word 153, literal Aramaic word Iuma, eon, immeasurable period. That means that nobody was there to know when God started to create and when he finished. Age or day, era, age or day, right? Day with a capital D, because their day was based on the lunar cycle. The lunar cycle of where God makes the two great celestial bodies, the sun and the moon, for the day and the night, etc. in the fourth eon. Okay, it's a really weird day. It's a Hebrew day, which is completely different to our day as we understand it. Okay, but then you have Yom in today's modern Israeli Hebrew, which translates as day, meaning a day as in a day of a week, the week, right? So there's that difference there. So you have the difference between the original Aramaic Iuma and today's modern Israeli Yom. Okay, so way back then, they probably would have been the same. Yuma, Yom, pretty much the same, meaning immeasurable period, age or day.